Hi, I'm Tom Stevenson, and welcome to the Construction Professional Interview Series. If you haven't seen other videos of mine, please subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking subscribe and clicking the notifications icon so you're aware of new uploads as they become available. Today, I'm going to be interviewing a former graduate of mine. As you know, I'm a professor of construction management at George Brown College in Toronto. I also teach at University of Toronto. And Nazar Drobot is a former graduate from our degree program. He started his own construction business, and I've invited him on to talk to a class. So this is a recording. He was talking to one of my classes, and he's going to focus in on Nazar specializes in foundations, damp proofing, waterproofing, underpinning foundations, lowering basements of existing houses. Some sort of specialized work that's kind of becoming more popular in Toronto and other big urban centers. I've heard of them in Vancouver and other areas where you have houses that were built, they have like a back laneway, and there's like what they call sometimes a granny flat, or nowadays an office that you can build in your back, or a rental suite. So depending what city you're in, it's a growing industry. Anyways, Nazar's done several of these types of foundations, and it's kind of a specialized niche. So he walks through the foundation aspect of putting one in a very tight area. That's one of the things in urban centers. You're dealing with logistics a lot. So there's a lot of discussion on logistics in this video. As well, Nazar does another complex foundation of supporting an existing structure, very small, but big enough to make into an office that an architect had, and how that structure was supported so that they could put a proper foundation under it. And then the structure above afterwards would have been renovated to make a really nice office that's, I believe, on one of the rivers in Toronto. So prime location, but if they tore it down, the zoning wouldn't permit building it again. So this is taking advantage of an existing situation and giving it new life. So something else that's very popular. Some of these projects in big urban centers, the property value is so high, it makes it very worthwhile to do these types of projects for the clients. And so Nazar's found a specialized niche. Towards the end, he talks about what it's like to start a business, and start a business during the beginning of COVID as well. So anybody that's thinking about starting their own construction-based business, I think it's worth hanging on till the end and to listen to that component. I'm going to try to put some time slots in the bottom in the description. If you're only interested in the underpinning part, you could go to those minutes in the video, or if you're only interested in the granny flat part or the damp proofing part, or the specialized project or business, I'll try to leave a few little slots that you could just slide along to if that's the case. I hope you enjoy this video. I thought Nazar did a great job, and we'll see you in our next video series. As I mentioned, please click subscribe, and let's build this construction community together. I'm Tom Stevenson, wishing you a wonderful day, and enjoy this video. Bye for now.
Anyway, a little bit more about myself. Like Tom said, I did the 4-year bachelor program in 2014 till 2018. I was a student at George Brown, and obviously we were doing it in person at that time. And at the moment, things have changed a little bit. I really loved the program. Gave me a lot of base knowledge of what I needed to know in terms of doing my everyday construction things, which we'll get to a little bit later. But yeah, I started off as a student. I was working for the entire time I was a student at George Brown for the 4 years. I started off working as a laborer for a company that did what I do right now, waterproofing, foundation waterproofing, so protecting the foundation from moisture, water, and potential damages of the interior. Basement lowering, which is a big job, like it's a big project, and it's a very it gets done a lot in the city at the moment, especially to bring in more rental to bring in to give more rental to people and homeowners want to bring a little bit of extra income into their pocket. And while I was doing that, I was working as a laborer for the 4 years while I was at George Brown. And then when I graduated, or actually while I was working, while I was studying at George Brown for our third year co-op term, I got a position as a project coordinator at Acon in their fiber optics division, which was basically their contract, the utilities contract between Acon and Bell, where they did the underground infrastructure for all the Bell Five lines in the city of Toronto, either by poles or underground boring. So I did that for the 4 years for my co-op, and then I went for the 4 months of my co-op, and then after I went into my fourth year, obviously I wasn't working at Acon, and when I graduated my fourth year, it kind of presented two opportunities. Either I go back to Acon, but they offered me the position at their head office as a office, like a office. It was something involved with managing managing their like construction books and not really much site exposure, which was kind of what I was used to and what I was pursuing, and what I wanted to do was to be more on site and involved in the building process rather than sitting in the back. And so at the same time, I was presented from the company where I worked for 4 years as a laborer to be a project manager, where I would be responsible for a few crews, and I got a work truck, and I'd be constantly on site, which was kind of my main focus when I was doing, when I was in school, when I was learning construction, or when I made a decision that I wanted to be in construction, but I wanted to be on site. I didn't really want to be in the office. And then at that point, I took the position at the small residential company where I worked as a laborer, and then I went on to be a project manager there for about a year and a half. I ran upwards of between 3 to 6 crews on the daily basis. Sometimes the boss would go on vacation for a month, and he would leave me the entire business to run. So that means everything from the estimating to the bookkeeping to managing all the workers. At that time, there was about 17 to 20 guys on the daily basis. And that's kind of how I got right into it. The best exposure. While he was like, that's how I learned the whole business, basically working for that company as a project manager. And then when COVID hit, I decided to kind of give it a try, since there wasn't much work, and I was kind of laid off per se, as my job was not really a laborer. I was more of a project manager, so he took over that kind of aspect. So I decided to kind of give it a shot, and that's where Drobot Construction was started. So we're the same exact thing in terms of the old company I worked for. So Drobot Construction was established in 2020. So last year, May. We specialize in foundation waterproofing, wet or damp basement, underpinning, which is basement lowering. So lowering if say you have a 6-foot basement, that means from the top of your floor where you're standing on your floor to the bottom of the ceiling, it's about 6 feet. So we turn it to a more common height, which in the city, and I'll get to that later as well, is 8 feet. So now you increase your height room by about 2 feet. Recently, we branched out into a new niche in the city, which is the Laneway foundations. So basically, if your house in the city of Toronto has a backyard that goes onto a laneway, and you have either a garage there or no garage, but regardless, your backyard goes onto a laneway, you might be qualified to build a suite, a laneway suite. And the reason it's called a suite is because your plumbing, electrical, all those things are coming from your main house. So they're not separated from between, like, it's not its own house. It's connected still to the main house, but it acts as a laneway suite. And when we get to it, I have a couple pictures. I'll explain it to you guys as well. We do basement walkouts and basement additions, and certain specific concrete work like sidewalks or smaller things. Nothing really on the large commercial scale where we're pouring like hundreds of thousands of square feet. Nothing like that yet. So anyway, let's get a little bit into it. So here we go. This is the waterproofing. Now, Tom, are you able to see the slide?
Perfectly clear.
Okay, perfect. So right here is the process of waterproofing the foundation from the exterior. Basically, as you can see on the first picture, right over here, there's a foundation crack, and this happens to be a cinder block foundation. So cracks would normally present themselves in two ways. If it's a cinder block foundation, it will be kind of something like this because it will follow the mortar joints of the block, as you can see, like a step. Whereas if it was a poured concrete foundation, this crack would most likely just spread straight down because it would be called a stress crack. It's most likely on the corners of the windows, and it would with a poured concrete foundation, it would shoot directly down. That's why with cinder block compared to poured concrete, waterproofing is a little bit different because with a poured concrete foundation, you're more focusing on the crack repair. With the block foundation, you're focusing on protecting more blocks rather than just focusing on one certain area. So after the wall has been excavated, the wall gets cleaned, brushed, dried, and then we apply a layer of tar on the wall. It becomes over time very elastic, like 3M, like you can stretch it out, it won't tear, it won't rip. On it, we put a 4 mil poly. And as you can see on the third picture, this is from the same job site. That's the condition of their drainage pipe that was around the house, which is called the weeping tile. If you look on the second picture, it's just right over there beside the footing of the house. You can kind of see the ceramic pipe there. That's basically the old clay weeping tile that was used back 100 years ago. They put it in those sections, and basically over time, roots get in there or clogs with dirt, and it stops doing its function and needs replacement or different ways of approaching it. But in this case, if you can see how many roots there were in the weeping tile, there was a big tree growing in the corner, and all those little roots clogged it all up, and it wasn't draining properly. After we treat the wall, we remove the weeping tile and we install we deal with a company or a brand named Delta MS. I like their product the most, the easiest to work with. We install the membrane over the tar and 4 mil poly. We changed the weeping tile to a 4-inch. Now it's a more modern system. It's a 4-inch perforated pipe. It's plastic, it bends, and it has bunch of small little cuts, and it has a filter cloth over it. So no matter where water hits it, it will seep through, and the filter cloth kind of stops all those roots and excessive dirt or any debris kind of getting inside the system. We cover it with gravel. And then in the last picture, that's basically backfill to the top and simple landscaping to make it look nice and the same way as it was before. So that's the process of waterproofing. It's pretty straightforward. Essentially, you're just protecting the wall in a few steps that are very common, and you will find them. Most companies use the same steps in terms of how to waterproof the foundation from the outside. From the inside, it's a little bit less work. All you would do is break a trench to install the weeping tile from the interior and install this membrane from the interior as well. And it would act as water would flow into the interior and travel inside the pipes to a sump pump, which would discharge it outside. And I might have pictures of that coming up as well. Next would probably be in our slides, the underpinning. This is These are more the longer projects. These projects require building permits. They require engineer visits, city inspectors coming in on multiple stages. It's more lengthy, might have some structural work to do with it, might need new beams, new structural supports, walkouts, additions. So these projects can be small, simple basement of 500 square foot that just requires a underpinning, which is lower it, pour the slab, and that's project finished, which would take, you know, anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks from start to finish, and they could get as lengthy as 2 to 3 months, depending on how much work is involved. So on the first picture, as you can see on the wall, we always mark out sections in patterns of 1, 2, 3, meaning that, and on the second slide, you can look at it as well. And we split the entire basement into those sections. Everything is going to be on the building permit, on the permit drawings, in terms of how big each section has to be. So usually we do 36-inch sections. So max is 4 feet, 48 inches, but I feel like that's a little bit too much of taking out too much dirt from the foundation that it's sitting on. So we go with 36 and we just have a little bit more sections. But essentially it's still the same thing. So we mark out the sections 1, 2, 3s. And what that means is first we will be doing the 1s, then we will be doing the 2s, and then we will be doing the 3s. And that's basically, you'll see right now in the coming up slides as to what I mean by that. So on the third picture, if you take a look, you'll see that we dug down from the original floor, which was roughly around here, as you can see on the picture here. And are you seeing the cursor?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So where this brick is, that was the old floor level. So we dug down to this, it was about 2 feet or so, and we went underneath it. Now I'll show you one of the drawings I have on my email, an actual permit drawing. And what I mean by we go underneath it for the entire width of the footing. So if your house footing is say 20 inches, we would go underneath the wall 20 inches, clean it all underneath to make sure that we cover the whole width of the footing when we pour the concrete in there. And the most very important thing is cleaning the underside of the footing, of the existing footing. That's the biggest key when even the city inspectors, they come in to inspect, they will rarely jump in the hole to test anything or to check anything. But when they do, it's to stick their hand underneath the footing and to make sure that all the sand, dirt, and all the debris has been cleaned off. So concrete, obviously, you've got to measure out each side. So if you can see that we basically went down from a whole floor about here, 30 inches down. So this whole basement used to be 6 feet. So we're turning it now to an 8-foot finished basement. So after the section has been excavated, the engineer inspects.
Oh, I think we're having a little bit of signal problem for a second there, Nazar. Close now.
Couple of technical difficulties. So we were here, I believe. Okay, we're good. You can hear me well?
Yep.
Perfect. So as I was saying, after the measurements are done, engineer has to come and inspect every single concrete board that is absolutely any concrete that's being added onto the structure has to be inspected by either an engineer or a city inspector. Both of them work together. So without the engineer's report that he has been on your site, he inspected your site conditions, your site conditions are safe, then he prepares basically reports. There are in the stages of first, second, and third, just like your sections that you marked out. Once you finish all the first sections, he prepares a report. Once you finish all the second sections, the engineer prepares a report. And once you finish the third sections, the engineer prepares a report. The inspector then examines all that, and he marks your inspections passed based on those engineer permits. Now, certain things after you finish with the structural work, you don't need the engineer anymore. So you just go back to just dealing with the city inspector on his own. So basically, as you can see on the second picture, that's the concrete has been poured and the forms have been removed. And if you look on the third picture, that's basically right here was the old floor, and we lowered it by this new concrete amount, which was in this, as you can see, about 32 inches from here. Now we also have our, in this case, here we did new drain roughing. So he had a washroom in there, simple stuff like a three-piece washroom, which is a sink, toilet, and a shower. A floor drain for the basement, wherever it's going to be. In this case, it's right here. You have the primers going into there from each thing that's going to be condensing. And then you have a laundry room, and usually that's it. So that would be your basement drain rough.
So Nazar, is that a sewage pump?
Exactly, I was going to get to that as well. So in the case, as you can see up top, we have the main house stack. So this at the moment is taking all of the washroom fixtures, the kitchen, and everything that's anything with the sewage through these stacks, and they go to the front of the house and to the city, like the way it was draining before. This stack used to go down and into under the slab of the old floor, because the city drain is at a certain height. And the fact that we lowered now the basement by 32 inches, that pipe now is like over here on the level of this concrete, if we were looking, which means that we can't, if this is the city and this is our basement, if our drains now, water doesn't drain up, it drains with gravity, they won't be able to go to the city. So in the case that you cannot lower the city, and there is a way you can lower it if the city is low enough, meaning that their furthest point of exit on their drain that's on the private property, if it is low enough for you to catch a minimal slope from the basement to that area, you can safely excavate outside, replace the drains from the city to the private property inside the house, lower them to the depth that you're going with the basement, and then your whole system won't need a sewage ejector like we have on that picture. Now, a sewage ejector it's basically like a sump pump unit, but it's only for sewage. It has to be one vented to a vent that is existing in the house, or a new vent has to be created for it because it's going to be getting sewage air. And the second pipe from it will be connecting to this stack right here, basically. So what's going to happen is all of these units, the toilet, the sink, the shower, the laundry, they will all flow inside that sewage ejector. Now, once that sewage ejector fills up to the point, it has a sensor in there that controls the level it rises of the sewage. Once it reaches a certain level, like a pump goes on, a motor, and it ejects the sewage up and into the stack here, where this stack takes it to the city. So essentially, it's the exact same thing as it was before, just an extra pump is needed to be able to only drain the basement fixtures to the city. Now, when you're installing a pump like that, keep in mind for the future, if anyone ever encounters a sewage ejector pump, it is not a good idea if your basement is going to have a washroom, not a washroom, a kitchen, to have the kitchen connected to the sewage ejector. because kitchen, you have grease from your cooking and so forth. The grease in the sewage ejector, just like grease anywhere, starts to build a, a core around it, starts to grease it up, and then it can clog the sensor that shows the levels of for the motor to go off, and then you might have a couple issues of having to maintain that, clean that, and all those kind of things that aren't unnecessary. So if you can make the connection to the city for the kitchen, that would be the best. And most of the times, the way you can achieve that is by putting the kitchen right there by the closest where the drain exits the front of the house, putting the kitchen there. That way, at least you might be able to put the kitchen towards the city, while everything else would go to the sewage ejector.
And that's because of the fall. You're closer to the drain,
Exactly.
the main
Exactly.
sewers.
Exactly. Exactly. So on the next picture, so basically from the third picture here, we wrapped the interior, and you'll see right now with the membrane, like I said, for interior waterproofing. So that's the membrane on the wall there. It will, instead of digging outside, if you already have the foundation wall exposed to nothing, you do the waterproofing from the interior. You install a weeping tiles right along the foundation wall, and they also go into a pump that's similar to the sewage ejector, but a bit smaller and only works as pumping out water.
Hey, Nazar, could you go back just for 1 second?
Yep.
So you see how in the middle image you poured the foundation and it kind of wraps around the existing wall. Now I've seen, this is the way that we always did it too, exactly that way. But I noticed on some of these tack box details, Toronto area chief building officials, that they said to leave a space and pack a non-shrink grout. And I always felt, how are you going to get that non-shrink grout tight in there so well? Now, part of the reason they do that is because of shrinkage. Is there any special requirements? Like, so would you say this is pretty much the standard way that most people do it still? Or is there an alternate way that's sometimes used? Is there anything special about the concrete too?
So in terms of special about the concrete, no. Nothing is the same concrete as everything else. So they still do use for certain things. Some contractors still prefer to use the non-shrink grout method, where they will bring up the concrete to almost sit underneath your footing, but there's a couple inch gap between the bottom of your footing and the underpinning you poured, a few inches, and you're supposed to pack non-shrink grout in between that cavity, so your footing bonds with the underpinning. But what was the problem with that, and a lot of issues that presented, is one, the main thing is the time it takes afterwards, that and that for you to come and pack each section 2 inches, this much, 20 inches deep with non-shrink grout. And keep in mind, non-shrink grout, if you've ever worked with it, is not the same as any mortar or concrete or cement or anything. It is it reaches its kind of max strength, or the way it's supposed to be mixed is it kind of has to be dry, almost like in little lumps, where it's not wet and it's not all consistent together. It's kind of like if you take it, it will crumble in your hand. But if you can pack it into a snowball and you can shove it under there, it will keep that form, it will catch that form, it will stay like that. And that's why they kind of had the non-shrink method. But I feel these days, either this is called an overpour method, so you're overpouring the existing footing, and there's still the method where it goes flush with the wall and has steps out like a normal footing, where you go flush with the wall but step out with the normal footing. The issue with that one is that sometimes the concrete might not always touch the underside of the footing. It's still harder. So the easiest, most optimal way that's the most effective is the overpour method, because knowing that if you overpour it by those 6 inches or so, the concrete's bound to sit underneath the footing and overpour it. So that's the most common one that everyone does, is the overpour method. But again, the drawings can be designed for different things. But even if the drawings are designed with a 3 inch or with a non-shrink grout, I had a couple encounters like that. The engineer will always overrule it and say that he prefers to do the overpour method over the non-shrink grout, and there's never any issues with that. Even the city inspectors, if they came into a project that is being done by non-shrink grout, they would even be shocked, as in, like, wow, this is still being done. You know what I mean? I have a feeling that Topcock is going to have to change, or will change soon, their design practice, or because they kind of have a general layout, and they submit that with all the permits and all the drawings and how things should be done. But at the end of the day, even on the drawings that the city presents, it says up to the contractor's discretion, meaning that sometimes things are in the drawings that you cannot achieve, but you have to do a little bit differently to be able to achieve the same thing. But it won't be the exact same way it is on the drawings, but it will serve the same purpose as it has on the drawings. Okay, so next slide here. As you can see, we had a existing wall here on the first one. It was underneath the stairs, so it had some load bearings properties. And if we remove this wall, we had to, in order to not keep this wall, we had to basically secure the load from the upstairs with temporary jacks. And then when we poured the concrete, as you can see here, but I'll get to that. When we pour the concrete, they build the wall on the new concrete with their sill plate, or with their gasket sill plate, and then they can remove the jacks because the new wall will be carrying the load. But here we did the interior waterproofing, then we passed the drain inspection, and we installed the 3/4 inch gravel, a layer of 3/4 inch gravel. And then on the second picture, that is radiant in-floor heating hydronics, which is basically a PEX pipe that has in-floor heating. So this slab here is basically, there's a thermostat, and the thermostat goes inside your mechanical room or wherever you choose to put the thermostat. But anyway, all these pipes and the water inside these pipes is all connected to the hot water tank inside the house. And you in the winter, obviously you're gonna run the heated floor, it heats up the concrete. Very nice. It's a new thing as well that a lot of people are wanting to install, even if they're not going to use it. Just having that roughen inside the slab is already better than not having it, in case, the worst thing is you do a job of this scale, and then you don't install the radiant in-floor heating, and then you come back to a couple of years and you're like, well, I wish I installed that radiant in-floor heating. So just to install the roughen, you don't have to make the connection to do the expensive work, because that's more expensive to then connect everything from the hydronic system to the hot water tank and everything. But once you do that, obviously your floor is nice and warm. And even if you don't decide to do that, you can still keep the roughen, will always stay. And for future, if you're selling the house, it will add more value to your home when the basement floor is heated with in-floor heating, not electric, with actual hydronic water in-floor heating, is more value to the home than it is if there was no in-floor heating for the future. And then after the in-floor heating, we pour the slab. So as you can see, that's the new basement height from the bottom of these joists here, bottom of these joists to the top of this was 8 foot 1 inch, I believe, or 8 foot 3/4 inch, because they were going to lay some flooring and the drywall for the ceiling, and that would have brought them to an exact 8 foot finish. So if you can see, even on the wall here, I have marked out spray painted 106. That was our depth before adding all the layers that we came up. So when we finalized everything, we had a finished height of 97, 96 inches. So basically we came up 10 more inches from where we finished with the underpinning, with the 4 inches of gravel, 2 inches of foam, and 4 inches of concrete. All right, so Let's move on to the next. So this is a laneway foundation. As you can see, this house here has access to a laneway. This is in the Bloor West Village, Runnymede and Bloor area, Runnymede and Annette. So it goes, actually Annette hits DuPont, which goes directly to George Brown. So it's kind of on that path. And the great thing about these foundations is you only have to go down 4 feet for frost protection because they don't have a basement. So it's not like you're excavating in big depths and you have to start doing shoring systems and temporary supports, nothing like that. It's a simple concept of going 4 feet deep. And if you look at the second picture, that is basically what looks to be like a foundation wall. In reality, it's just a footing. It's got a 12-inch thick it's 12-inch thick, 4 feet deep, and reinforced with rebar and poured with concrete. Now we remove these forms, we backfill the dirt, compact everything around here thoroughly as it's sand. So thoroughly compact everything here. And basically on the third picture, you can see that we have laid so the finished height or the finished floor of this laneway house was higher than the grade here. So I prefer to work with the block to lay the curb. So in this case, we did 2 courses of block to kind of bring us up to the final finished floor level. And everything is marked by a surveyor for us. All the 4 points of the corners of the excavation and the final finished slab level that we have to kind of go off. So after we did the block, we did the gravel inside, new drain roughen, got inspected by the city, 2-inch styrofoam, and this is a perimeter slab, which means it's on a 45-degree angle where the dirt is shaved and the gravel. So it's going to be much thicker concrete here around the corner of all the blocks get infilled with rebar. And around here on the inside, it's going to be very thick. It's going to be about 16-inch thick slab here. So it's going to be able to bear a lot of weight and a lot of load. It's not just a continuous 4-inch slab all around. This one was designed a little bit different. And if we look on the next slide, and here's the finished product from my end. So we poured it, and next day we removed the formwork, did a site cleanup, swept everything up, and that's pretty much it. So you see how we got lucky with this laneway here. As you can see on the third picture, it's kind of on a corner. It's on a corner of a street. It's the corner lot. So the access for the concrete truck, for all the bins and everything was super easy. Whereas you can imagine there's some laneways in downtown Toronto that they're one-way traffic only. They're very tight, multiple turns, or some have heavy traffic in there, and you can't necessarily get a concrete truck in there. You can't get your bins exchanged in there. And those are kind of the challenges that arise from this project. So for example, if you can't get a concrete truck in here, and this goes obviously to the same way for the underpinning as well. There's difficulties with bin placements and with concrete truck delivery. But for example, the laneway, since this is in the back, our first laneway, we wheelbarrowed about 150 feet. We had about 6 wheelbarrows for a truck and a half of concrete. We emptied him in about three hours of hand labor, just in the winter too. It was January. It was a cold day, and 6 wheelbarrows running from 8 a.m. in the morning until lunchtime. It was dirty, muddy, everything you can imagine. It was of the worst day on site. But we got it done, and that's all that matters. But those are kind of the working the laneway projects, um, the price difference could be for the same exact foundation, the same exact thing that was like, for example, this one here, this size, this simplicity, the fact that it's sand as well. If this was somewhere in the deep lane where there's no access to it, there's no way to get your, everything has to be either hand mixed, hand brought in, or and everything has to be removed with by hand as well, like in work vans and everything, all the material, everything has to get disposed through your own sources, nothing can be brought in there. You can imagine the price would obviously be, upwards of 50% more for something like that, as you're incurring a lot of time, and time is labor, and labor is money. And so those, you have to be able to factor all that into your prices as well. That's why when it comes to laneway, I always like to, if I'm quoting on a laneway, since I'm always in the city, I'm always driving around, I like to stop by at the site, go walk in the laneway myself, kind of see what I'm working with, see the turning radius, see what car I can get here. I have different suppliers that have different size cars. See who would be able to come in here, if they would be able to even come in there, and then based off that, I would work my estimate and bid on the job based off that. But I always like to go see the laneway, whenever I'm quoting on the laneway foundations, because those are very easily to quote something, get the job, and then when you come there on day one, you start noticing all these conditions that you did not anticipate, and that starts delaying you. And in the best case scenario, you can get a little bit more money. Worst case scenario, you gotta bite your lip and figure out how to get it done with the budget you have. And in the case, sometimes it might not be the most profitable, and that's a learning experience. It's something that you learn from. You know where you had mistakes, you know where you went wrong, and then on the next one you quote, you won't make those kind of mistakes again, and then eventually it'll become so much easier, and you'll exactly know, oh, okay, that laneway, I already know that laneway, we can do work there. Oh, that laneway, I know that laneway, it's tough laneway, we can't do work there. We have to resort to manual labor and everything like that. And there's a project that's coming up, that I have, that has, basically it's like a laneway foundation, but it's uh it's a row house downtown on College and Bathurst. It's a row house with a lot of traffic, parking on both sides of the street. You There's absolutely no way to get a parking spot in front of the house. Um, and the thing here, the backyard has no access to, no, there is a laneway, but it ends 4 houses before this house, meaning that the backyard, there's no exit out of the backyard. There's only way to enter the backyard is through the front of the house. And the front of the house has maybe space for a small bin, but to exchange it is a difficulty. You can't, the parking, getting a parking spot in front it's almost impossible. It's so busy there. And second, even if we do get a parking spot, even if we can exchange the bin, we can't pour the concrete because the concrete truck is much bigger. Parking it anywhere there is obstruction, it's traffic, and everything else to go with it. So this specific project has to be, everything gets done through hand. We have to go through the house with our wheelbarrows. They're knocking out the entire first floor. We're going to be going through the house with the wheelbarrows to, and all concrete, which is going to be about 5 to 8 skids of concrete bags being used there at least, which is upwards, it's around 400 to 500 bags of concrete that will go just for a small little addition in the back. But that's what I mean when sometimes the project is just, no one wants to do it. And that's kind of my thing, is I like to pick up the projects that no one wants to do, is because I feel like that's the best way to kind of show that you're able to do the work. and that you can work with any site condition, which is a main thing when you're building in downtown, is knowing that your contractor can build in any condition, doesn't matter, he's able to get the job done. And that's a big thing as to why people, because everyone prefers to now work with equipment and excavators, bobcats, and things like that. But you can't bring that machinery to every single project. Sometimes it's just no way to bring that machinery in, and those people decline quoting on these jobs where I like quoting on the work that is all manual and hand labor, as now no one really wants to do it, so he has a more advantage to me. Alrighty, I'll move on from this. I think I've been on this topic for a little bit. So this is a basement walkout and addition. This is a ongoing project at the moment on Bloor West Village as well. Runnymede and Annette, kind of the same area, just a couple streets down from this Laneway house. Literally one block south of this Laneway house is this addition here.
Is that coincidence? Is that the same contractor?
So this addition is from a neighbor of a guy who I did an underpinning for this summer. So it's a referral essentially. So I've been referred to this job by an underpinning that we did. The client was happy, he referred us, and here we are. So like I said, I'll talk about that as well. I'll when we get to there, but in case I lose my train of thought, at first, for this, what's been a year and 3 months, I've been operating my business based off solely off referrals and taking on the projects that, and the way I got projects was taking on the jobs that nobody wanted to really quote on or do. And I'll bring you a couple projects at the end. I'll show the very unique ones that I felt were the most unique out of all the ones that I've done, that were kind of like the milestone projects for the company, in terms of how we managed to make it work, make it happen, and on time and on budget. But yeah, so I even at the moment run my business mostly off of referrals. I don't really do much marketing, advertising. I just hired a company to design a website for me. So it's been a year and a half that I've been kind of no marketing, no advertising, just a Google page with some reviews, and all the work has been coming from referrals. And we've been busy since day one, through the winter, and even up till right now, 2 crews working every day. So there's 5 guys plus me, so there's 6 of us. So 2 crews working on the daily basis. Anyway, back to this. This is an addition that's also in that area. So if you can see that area, Runnymede and Bloor, the Bloor West area is very sandy. It's a lot of sand here. As you can see on these pictures, those are all collapses that happened overnight, and no one was working on the site, but mostly from rain. When the rain hits sand, sand gets heavy and kind of like falls off from the foundation wall. So this depth here is about 6.5 feet. So it is pretty deep, but not as deep as it could have been. We had to, in order to build this addition, as you can see on these 2 pictures, we had to underpin this back wall. So essentially going back to what we talked about with, we had to go underneath and reinforce the back wall, because the existing house basement is going to be smaller than the new addition basement. And smaller, I mean the height from the ceiling to the floor. This existing one's about 6 feet, and this one's going to be 7 feet 9 inches is going to be the final. So we poured the footings, we excavated, did the underpinning, we poured the footings. Then this is about 400 blocks here. We were able to put them up in about, we did 8 hours, 9 hours on Saturday, and about 4 hours on, no, 9 hours on Friday, and about 4 hours on Saturday. So in about 13, 14 hours, we were able to put up all these blocks, just 10-inch blocks, heavy blocks, all reinforced with rebar. As you can see, we parged the foundation wall from the outside, so it doesn't absorb moisture, and it's not exposed to the mortar joints. Then we waterproofed it all. from the inside and from the outside. I don't, since this project is still ongoing, I don't have the other pictures yet. We did pour this floor actually on Tuesday morning, right after the long weekend. So the other day, we poured the floor here. We infilled all these blocks with concrete and rebar, and we cut the door opening here for the basement now. So we're at a completion stage. As you can see, there's these two things that look like there might be window openings. So what's happening here is these have to get formed with plywood and 2x4s, and it's all getting infilled with concrete because there's going to be a steel frame sitting on these for this back addition, which is very unusual to go these kind of depths for an addition. It's only about 13 by 16, that it has a A-frame, a steel A-frame, all custom steel work. And so all we have to do is basically form this and infill it with concrete, and that would be it for us on this project. So we've been here for about 10 to 11 working days up to now, and there's about another day left for the final completion. So from excavation to final slab and everything for an addition of this size, 400 blocks or so, took us about almost 2 full working weeks, a little bit over 2 full working weeks. And keep in mind, we do work Monday to Saturdays. Okay, next.
So Nazar, so on the back of that house,
Yeah.
So basically that's you've got it underpinned because the existing floor is probably like your usual, what, 6'6" maybe, or
Not
an old
even
house.
barely 6 feet. Yeah, you kind of
Okay.
have to lean your head to the side when you're walking through the basement.
Especially you, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that you can notice that that's underpinned across the back. There is another way that could be done that takes up a lot more space, but sometimes it's quicker depending what you're doing, but it takes up a lot more space, that benching method, right?
Yeah, the benching method for sure. I guess these the conditions and the neighbor and all the setbacks and everything was okay to do it this way.
That's a semi, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this is a semi, correct. So we had to support the neighbor's stairs, and there was actually a family of raccoons living here. And we noticed they used to, because of this 2x4 here, that was their way in and out. So when we poured this footing, we came the next day and there was raccoon paw prints all over the footing, but nothing was in there. So we figured that they were using this 2x4 here to get in and out, and there was a big family of them living underneath this. So I'm assuming they haven't been disturbed for a long time until he came here to build the addition.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's should be finished today. Tomorrow we should be out of this project and on to the next one. So this right here would probably qualify as my most unique project ever, and this was one of the first, maybe this was my third project or fourth project since I started the business. This was done last summer in 2 stages. There was a stage 1 and a stage 2. So as you can see, this house here is located in Ontario Port Credit area. It's on Stave Bank and Lakeshore. It's basically the owners have a boathouse, used to be a boathouse, and it's a grandfathered house. So meaning that you can't demolish it and rebuild it, because if you demolish it, you can't rebuild it anymore. So it has to stay the exact same way as it is. And what happened was the foundation was crumbling. As you can kind of see, you can see the structure is staying at the top, but the wall is slanted and it's kind of getting pushed. And if you look at the blocks here, they're all caving in, and I have a nice picture right now to go with it. Like, look at the third slide.
Jeez.
Look how the wall is. Literally the gaps there, you could stick your fist through these gaps, and the back wall is all getting pressured by these stone here. And pretty much it had no stability, no footings, no foundation absolutely nothing. And the why I call this my unique project, and why, going back to what I said with I like quoting on jobs that a lot of people don't, is because they were looking for a contractor for 10 years. They had about 15 people come by to take a look at this job, and every single one of them declined it because the catch here was the house sits at the bottom of a 30-flight stairs by the water. So the original house is up top on a hill, and this boathouse is about 30 flights of stairs. And I'm talking about not like this kind of incline. I'm talking about this kind of incline where it's steep and quick to this boathouse. And not only was I turns out I was the only person who actually submitted a price for this job in the last 10 years. Nobody else even wanted to quote it, not to mention do it. They didn't even want to attempt to give a price on this job. So I quoted this job in two stages. Stage one would have been supporting the upstairs structure, because this whole structure here sits on a concrete slab. The floor is made out of is concrete, and it's got a cracks in there.
Oh, wow.
And it's got cracks in there, and it's shifted based off the way the wall went. So it was a lot of work. But first stage was, we poured these footings on the back of the house, in a line with these four sono tubes in the front of the house. And we built up, these are 6x6 pressure treated posts. We anchored and epoxied into the sono tubes, which were existing at the moment. So we had kind of had to do our work based off these. They installed the sono tubes, and that's it. They haven't done any other work inside the house. So we made these posts. We poured these footings in the back, and the goal was that we were planning on exactly this. So that's three 2x10s, fastened together with bolts, and they're acting as beams, four beams that hold up the. So if you even see on the third picture by the ceiling, that's the floor upstairs. That's a big crack right there. So we had to shim them in places as well, because they weren't sitting flush with the floor. So we had to shim in some lumber in between them. But anyway, we chipped off some of the wall to be able to put the beams through. We put the beams through, and we anchored them here as well, fastened them with bolts and everything as well. So basically now kind of the load of the upstairs sits on these beams, and I believe we cross bridged them as well, but we did a cross bridging in the middle as well, so it supports like we had lumber going like this, staggered all around, connected to each beam with joist hangers. So all the load is sitting. The floor is basically suspended by these four posts and four footings. So if we were to remove the foundation, the rest of the house would just rest on all this lumber, the beams we made, and everything else. So kind of giving us more safety in the project. So that was stage one, and stage two was to actually rebuild the foundation in a sequence all around. And the way I figured to do the best would be to remove loads off the wall where there's the least amount of load sitting there. There's no load, like the blocks have come off from the floor. There's a gap now between the floor, the bottom of the floor, and the top of the block. And I figured those would be the best ways for me to remove it. So this is kind of an example. We put some jacks, temporary jacks as well, here, just to hold the floor up. We removed the old block. Now keep in mind, every single block got brought up 30 flights of stairs up to the front yard of the house, behind the whole backyard, to the front yard of the house where there was a bin container. Every single block, every single bag of concrete, every single thing had to go down these 30 flights of stairs, up and down, no matter what. The only access to that house was through those 30 flights of stairs. So we removed the corner. we poured a new footing with rebar off. There was not even the whole, all these blocks were sitting on dirt. There was no existing footing. There was absolutely nothing. We dug down, and the reason we dug down is because I've discussed with the owner of giving him potentially a nice 7 foot clearance from the finished slab to his new concrete, to the top to the bottom of these beams that we installed. Because right now, right there, it was only about 4.5 to 5 feet of actual headroom. And when you're already doing all this, why not, if you can achieve more headroom, why not? So I did the footings with the intention of then underpinning, kind of, it's not really underpinning, it's now removing the dirt from the inside to the depth of the new footings so that he can have more headroom. And we poured these footings, removed the section of the wall, uh, uh, and then we built this up. Now the only trick here was, as you can see here, the top course was the biggest kind of head breaker in terms of how do we make sure that this here, because we infilled all these blocks, we put rebar in here, infilled all these blocks, but now we want to make sure that this, the existing concrete, the slab, bonds to the new wall. And if we kind of make cuts and try to insert blocks on their own, they're not really going to function properly, and it might still kind of send off more cracks into the floor. So our block here that we used were 10 inches thick. So my idea was, this wall here, the face of this wall inside sits on a 2x4. So I said, we're going to make a formwork that's attached to the second last course and attached to this, and we're going to core drill holes in the floor where we're going to pour concrete from inside the house to infill all these blocks. And then inside the cores that we drilled, we inserted rebar that acted as dowels that went inside the block here. And then the next day we'd cut the rebar off the floor, whatever was coming above the top of the floor. And then we removed the formwork. So essentially the last course here is all solid 32 MPa concrete. And the owner here was an architect. He actually has an architectural firm in here, Ontario. And his idea wasn't even there, as like after I proposed this, he was like, let's do it 100%. That makes the most sense. That's the only way to really do it, because the whole floor is offset, the levels are off. Cutting blocks to perfectly fit inside that last course is going to be, one, tough, and two, they're not even going to be solid infilled. So this idea here really saved the project and and made everything super smooth. And we went like that all the way around, as you can see. And even on this pictures, you can see right there, that's the formwork. You can see the blocks are wet. We just did the pour from upstairs. And we went like that around. And here you can see that too, the concrete infill. So essentially, this was the final product compared to this that was falling apart. This right here, that was completely falling apart as well. And then we turned it into this, all brand new, all blocks, new window opening, 10-inch blocks. Everything's reinforced with rebar. The footings are all reinforced, doweled into the block, waterproofed from the exterior as well. Weeping tile system installed. We increased his landscaping. We had excess dirt. We increased the height of his landscaping out here because we lowered the floor inside there and the footings. So essentially everything worked out. The second stage went smooth, and the new height there was almost 7 feet. So owner happy, contractor happy, and they were all shocked in terms of how we chose to do the work, while nobody else decided to even estimate on it. That was kind of the main thing of this project, is that I did what nobody else wanted to do, and gave me a lot of credibility for that.
So, so is the architect then restoring that, the part that's above?
Yeah,
And then,
so he already restored that. He's turning it into basically like a personal office space. And yeah, he already restored the whole top, the roof. It's got a, I think he installed the in-floor electrical heating. He's got an air conditioner in there. He's got some sort of a heater in there. He's got full electricity from the house, from his house back at the top. That's his house over there, sits like on top over here. And everything's ran in there. So it's fully functional. It's all sealed off, closed off. Extremely happy with the everyone's extremely happy, including myself, how smooth and everything worked out. The only thing is, it was an intense labor intensive project. uh, Everything has to go through the stairs. I wish I could see, maybe I can find it. There's a picture probably um, online on my Google page.
hmm.
There we go. Perfect. That's the house.
Oh, you probably have to stop share and share again, and then it'll show
Oh,
up.
okay. New share, Google Chrome, share. Okay, perfect. You see those stairs
Yeah,
on the picture?
yeah.
I don't, those are, yeah, so basically everything had to go up all those flights of stairs, and then up here, and then back down. And we had a little staging area on the side here. And that you can see all the old block, everything laying around here, all the debris, the piles of dirt that we excavated from the inside, because we had to excavate for our footings, and we went 2 feet deep for our footings, if not 3 feet. So all this excessive dirt has to get bagged, has to get brought upstairs to all these stairs to, this is backyard of the house, to the front yard of the house. So there's more walking here. So anyway, it took us about 34, 37 working days altogether to finish this project. But yeah, it was definitely challenging, and it was definitely exciting, and I'm very happy with the result, the way it came out. And yeah, that's kind of goes to show what I meant when I'll take on the project that nobody else wants to do, that no one if you can't get, like, the reason no one wanted to do this job is because they couldn't get their machine in there, and they all knew how much physical labor it's going to be, and everyone decided to pass on it. While to me, it presented as an opportunity, and it was definitely worth it. It was definitely worth the extra time, the extra labor and everything, but it was definitely worth it. Okay, and another last one. I'll make this quick. What time is it even?
Yeah.
Kind of getting a little carried away. Sorry.
You're doing fine. Great.
So this right here was a concrete backyard restoration. So this is this is by actually by Mark's place. This is Mount Pleasant and Lawrence
Oh
area.
yeah.
So the owner here has a backyard pool, and originally I started off with waterproofing his house, about a 3-day waterproofing job from the exterior. And he asked me to come to his backyard to take a look at a problem he's been experiencing. And basically, he has this retaining wall on the back, and it shifted. It cracked completely. It shot off a crack in this concrete here, all the way through for 27 feet of his backyard. Now, the unique part here is, if you look on the second picture, that's me standing over this fence. And there's an elevation drop. His backyard is 4 feet higher than this neighbor's backyard to the right. And that retaining wall that's holding up all of this stone, this whole load of stone here, is a rotten 6x6 pressure treated lumber right here. And essentially what it's doing is, this is the 6x6 retaining wall that's rotten. All the concrete's applying pressure to it, and it's kind of bending it, and it's losing its strength, and concrete's pressing down. And when concrete's cracking and pressing down, and there's a lot of weight, first of all, taking it, and plus all the stone load on top, it's all natural stone here. Each one of these squares of stone weighs like 100 pounds, if not more. It's all pressing on. So essentially, in the next five to 10 years, this whole thing could have shifted with the fence into the neighbor's backyard over here. So my approach to that was, again, no one wanted to do this because from the front of his house to this backyard, there's on the side, there's 6 flights of stairs. I mean, 6 steps to a side of his house. Then you got to walk the side of the house, which is about 60, 70 feet long. And then there's 4 steps down. Then his whole backyard is basically on an elevation where the pool is like the lowest point. So everything comes down like this. There's another flights of stairs and a couple more flights of stairs, and then there's the pool. So you can't get no concrete truck in there. You can't get no bin in there. There's no access to the backyard. There's another complicated, another head twisting like project. How am I going to do all this? Lots of labor. And he's now insisting that I do it because I did the waterproofing on his house. He said that I seem to understand what's going on with his backyard, which I did. And he was begging in a way, kind of like, please do the work. Like, I don't want to go look for anybody else. And so I had to figure out how we're going to get this done. So uh, I decided what we're going to do is remove this fence here first, lift off. This is about 7 feet wide by about 27 feet in length. This has here. And I decided that we're going to take apart this back wall and lift off this stone. Whatever stone we can preserve, we're going to stack on a skid on the opposite side of the pool. And we're going to expose it to the concrete, take this fence off. And what we're going to have to do is, from your neighbor's side, cut and remove these 6x6s and build a wall. So for example, this is that 6x6 retaining wall. If you look over here, the existing one. So what we did is we made sections of 5 feet. So we cut 5 feet of the 6x6 of the neighbors from the neighbor side. We dug down 4 feet for a sono tube reinforced with 415M rebars. We made a rebar cage all around here for it. And this is basically where the wall started, 27 feet. And then we worked from here to here, 5 feet sections. So we had about 5 sections at the end. And we did the pour by hand. We made the forms obviously from the inside as well with the footing and everything. Everything got poured by hand. 10 skids of concrete for this retaining wall and the slab, which is 560 bags of concrete. We took out a 14-yard bin of dirt and old stuff, old concrete and everything, and replaced basically everything with, like, this wall is so reinforced. It's 14 inches thick here for all that load that's happening around the pool. And we kind of went like that in sections. Next day we removed these 6x6s and attached to this existing one on both sides and kept going through. So at the end, this is what we got to. All those rebars that were sticking out here, for example, on this one, coming out of this slab from the retaining wall, we bent them down. We also waterproofed this retaining wall from the inside and connected a weeping tile to all of this and a floor drain. We installed a drain on the slab there for his pool, around his pool. So all the water that rains and everything can go inside the drain. Maybe you'll see on the other picture. But we waterproofed this whole wall and we gave him drainage to the opposite side. So any water that's collecting around here, there's a membrane on here. It's all going into the weeping tile and flowing out. So if you can see, yeah, right there, we installed the drain, but you can't see it. Anyway, we bent all that rebar from the wall. As you can see, that's the wall here. onto the platform. And then this was an old concrete floor here. We made a new rebar cage. Like, if you guys can see how much rebar, this is all 15M rebar. For before, when there was only a 6x6 lumber pressure treated wall here that was rotting, and the slab here was 3 inches thick with no reinforcement whatsoever, not even wire mesh. So this is what we installed. We poured it, built him another wall in the back with block, and then had it finished with stone afterwards. Clean up, and we installed the fence back. It's, if you're looking at it, after he decided to go, as you can see on this picture, there's turf here. He has fake turf. He put fake turf here, and just finished off these couple of natural stone pieces here. But he put turf here. But as you can see at the end, it kind of did not even look like we did anything. But there was 10 skids of concrete in all of this here, in the wall and in the slab here. That's 560 bags. All also got brought in from the front to the back. And yeah, so and then last slide, kind of the last slide is my challenges that I think that they're the challenges to me in a way, that I encounter on the daily basis. First of them being shortage of material. So by that I mean that some suppliers, for example, today, my guys came in the morning to our typical supplier. They didn't get their concrete delivery from yesterday. It's supposed to be a bunch of skids delivered. They didn't get delivered, and it apparently all those stores in that network also use the same supplier, so they didn't get it. So my guys had to drive around all morning to waste like an hour and a half of time looking through different suppliers for a skid of concrete. No one had a skid of concrete, and then they ended up getting back on the road in traffic and getting to site later. But anyway, those come up every day with no matter what. Sometimes you need something, and it's like the concept of when you don't need it, it's there, but when you need it, it's never there. And it's always like that. When you need something right away, something's pressing, a job's coming up or something, and shortage of material, and you can, nothing you can do about it. In the COVID time, well, I started my business in the COVID time, so the first thing I was introduced to is price inflation and volatility. I remember when I was working as a project manager for the company for the year and a half, we did not spend money or pay prices for materials like I started paying when I just started my business because of with the whole inflation. Prices are surging. I don't even use lumber as much, but recently I've been metal, steel, and my personal stuff that I use for my work, like on my tar building applications, membranes, all the littlest things I use for my stuff, everything is marked up about 20%, 30%, and that's something I have to account for in my quotes and in my invoices as well. Concrete as well has gone up about 2-3 times by $10 every half a year or so, and now winter's coming. And winter concrete is more expensive because they have additives inside the concrete. So if you price jobs for the winter and the summer that require concrete, uh, like I said earlier, those might be, you might have to reconsider or reevaluate the quote and see if there's anything you can do in regards to kind of getting more money or meeting halfway or something with the client or the contractor. Depends on who you're doing work with. That's kind of the main thing. Shortage of labor. That's a very, very, very tough thing right now. A lot of the construction labor comes in from abroad. Immigrants coming in from all Europe, mostly European, but a lot of other countries. The whole world comes here for work. And it used to be a thing where everyone would come for the summer season. They'd come for May, June, July, August, September, and then October, 6 months, they would go back home. They'd work the summer here, the season, then they go home for the winter, because obviously in the winter, every construction is a little bit slower. Some don't even work at all in the winter. So because of the COVID and the restrictions and the travel restrictions and so forth, it was extremely hard for laborers to come inside, or for anyone to leave their country in the middle of the pandemic and come to Canada to work. It was very difficult. So finding labor, and especially everyone who worked through COVID, this stuck with the companies they worked with through COVID. So it was like extremely hard for me to even get these 5 guys that I have right now. And that's why I'm thankful. I appreciate it, and I treat them all right, and yeah, and they love working for me, and we keep moving along. But definitely is something I would be in the future. I want to expand. I want to grow more crews and so forth. So maybe by next summer, those kind of those restrictions will lighten, and yeah, and maybe we'll gain more awareness, and people will be calling us to apply themselves for work. Scheduling ahead, this is a very big thing. Being able to foresee your project a few days ahead, a few months, or a couple weeks ahead, knowing that you need something in 2 3 days from now. Like say you're going to be at that stage where you'll need an inspector. So I would book him today for Monday or for Tuesday next week, because I already know I'm going to need them. We're going to be at that stage. So get it out the way. And so when you come to the day you need him and you might have forgotten about it, or you completely you disregarded it, or let's just say forgot about it, um, you won't be able to get an inspection in that time. And then if you can't get your inspection in, here comes a delay. And now you're an extra day delayed, and then a day could turn into two. And then materials, the same thing. Foreseeing, okay, I have this coming up in a couple of days, or a new that I need the delivery to my site of materials, order it ahead of time. It's a little challenging at first to see far far ahead and like deep down the line of your project, and kind of anticipate what's going to happen before it even happens yet. But that comes with experience, that comes with keep trying, and always keep I like to keep everything in written notes in a book in my car. That's my car is my office, and I have my notepad there, and I always keep track of everything that is happening. Not including my expenses for my projects, but most importantly, any estimates I arrange with anyone, any site visits I arrange with anyone, any meetings I arrange with anyone, everything I make sure I document it, because I look at my book every single day. I work Monday to Saturday, so I'm always there. I always see my book, and that's how I know. I write myself for a few days ahead, order this for that day, order this for that day, get my inspectors, engineers, everything sorted out. That way, everything is running smooth, because once if you start hitting these constant delays, you didn't plan to order your inspection, you didn't plan to order your engineer, you didn't plan to order your material. Now you're wasting time, you're wasting money, and you're spending out of pocket that could be money that comes back into your pocket. Instead, you have to give it away. Um, Starting new projects, by that I mean it's always tough to when you're doing like say a big project on the first day, first week is always the kind of get the ball rolling. um, Figure out the scope of work on site, how you're going to approach this project, what you're going to be doing, what are your milestones, what you're looking to achieve by the end of this week, what you're looking to achieve by the end of next week. And these are kind of in the first days of the project. If it's a bigger project like an underpinning where it's going to be a couple months long or stuff like that, the first week is the most key week, because that right there is going to create momentum for you. That right there is going to create everything for how the project is going to go. So if you're plan your inspectors ahead, plan your engineers ahead, and all these things that I mentioned previously. Uh, that's kind of the hardest part about starting the project. Once you get the ball rolling of the first week and everything goes smooth, the rest of the project will go the same way. I put down here bookkeeping and accounting. That's very important to anyone if you're thinking of going to start your own business or anything like that. um, doesn't not even in the construction, but in general, bookkeeping and accounting is very important. Something that you should dedicate dedicate some time to finding yourself a good accountant that can guide you, help you, and give you advice and feedback. And the next most important thing is you got to be in charge of all your books, of all your everything at first, until you learn exactly where you're spending, where can you save, where are you giving too much, where are you not giving enough. Learn how your business functions in your expenses, how much you need, how much your normal thing, how much you should budget for yourself, and this and all these littlest things. Until you learn it yourself, don't give it to anyone else to handle your business for you. Once you learn how your business works, once you understand how everything works, then you can kind of give it to someone else to manage your bookkeeping or accounting or so forth. But in first stages, very important, understand your business yourself, to understand where your expenses are going, to understand where your revenue is coming in from, and how you can improve everything, and how to make it more simple. And last part here is competition and trust. Competition, lots of competition out here, but at the same time, and this competition came in the last 5 6 years or so in the industry that I'm at. But at the same time, this competition isn't really a competition to someone who does good business and cares about their business and is there 24/7, 365, and it has good people working around them. That really isn't competition. It's fair game at that point, uh, because people who aren't those things of, being around, being there, being always available, managing their stuff, and they're they won't last for long. And the main thing that when I mention the word trust is I've come across this a couple of times, where the client chose to go with a cheaper price, because the quote was cheaper, and it was significantly cheaper than the other people that gave them the quote. So they decided to go with that contractor. And the way that that contractor works is they did a 1 days of work, uh, 1 day of labor. They brought a couple tools or something, small stuff. They did a half day or a day of labor, and they got a deposit. They took a deposit of a couple $1,000. Say it's a $10,000 job. They took $2,000, $3,000 of a deposit, and then never came back ever again. And that right there is those right there are uh, typical kind of construction fraud and construction scams that are happening with contractors. And that's when I say the competition. If you're doing proper business, then competition should not be a factor into you. But if you're working like that, and those kind of companies, those kind of contractors that do that kind of work, that take a deposit and don't come back, they ruin the image for the other contractors who do good work. And now the homeowner or the client is hesitant to reach out to anyone because they think they're all the same. You know what I mean? I'm the same as that guy. I'm probably going to do the same thing that the other guy did. And that creates a trust barrier that I have to overcome in order to show the client that I'm not like that, and I care about my work, and this is my last name on the company. And I always try to say that, my last name's on the company. I I take pride in the work that we do. I take my business very seriously, And if I'm always available 24/7, 365. I'll always answer the phone call. If I don't, I'll get back to you. But I'm always there. No, there's no problems. There's only situations, and we can work out everything. And it's been working well. I got nothing to complain about. And yeah, it's kind of everything. Thank you guys. Any questions if anyone
Great.
has?
Yeah, Abdul's been wanting to ask a question for a while. So sorry, Abdul, but I didn't want to interrupt. Nazar was in such a good flow.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I just had a few questions, but I forgot a couple of them now. But the ones that sit in my mind were like you mentioned about the boathouse that you did earlier, and how the homeowner was looking for a quote for I think 10 years, you said?
Yeah, 10 years, 15 contractors.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And I want to know, like, so did you jack up your prices a little higher because no one else was quoting that job?
Of course, that's something that I make that decision based off the urgency that they create for me. Like, it needs to be done right now, like at this moment. That means I have to drop other things and cater directly to them. So in that case, I would do a little bit of a price. But also I feel like that boathouse, the price that I quoted and what the job ended up being was more than fair, because if that job was done by anybody else, they would have either charged as much as me or if not more than me, and it would have taken longer than I did. But yeah, definitely those projects that are those kind of no one wants to do them, and you're the only one who's going to potentially attempt to quote on it, then you got to set yourself some contingency in that budget in case things don't go to your plan and things don't move the way you thought that they would move. The last thing you want to do is a hard, intense manual labor project for someone and then don't get paid any money for it, and because all your expenses would have taken your whole budget. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good.
complex.
That was a good question, Abdul. Like I just did a video myself on management reserve and contingency reserve, because if you're taking on a lot of extra risk, you better have some reserves in place, because otherwise all of a sudden it's out of your pocket. So definitely that's it. Now, it also ties to what we talked about in the Intro to Construction course, the type of contracts. I'm sure if the client decided, I'll pay you, Nazar, cost plus, and you can come in, and then Nazar doesn't have as much risk, he would do it for that cost plus, right? Because he doesn't have less risk. But then probably the architect was thinking, yeah, but what if this takes a lot longer and this cost, because there's all these things, they didn't want to take the risk. So then of course that makes it harder for them to get somebody in those conditions. Like everybody's like, I'm taking risk or you're taking risk. At some point, if the client really wants it, then they get a price, and maybe because there is so much risk, or quite frankly, so much extra work, that then they're willing to pay for it. And that's the other thing I think that Nazar's projects are really pointing to, is in Toronto, property values are worth a lot. And so, if you're doing a lane house, or you're underpinning a basement, or you're doing something very complex like that project in Port Credit, it costs a lot, but then, okay, yeah, it cost 150,000, but the value of my house went up by 200,000. Okay, well, yeah, it cost a lot, but now I get the enjoyment of this. If I'm the architect, I don't have to rent a place downtown and pay thousands of dollars of monthly rent. I've got this nice studio in the back. That's a pretty big value to that individual, right? Or if I'm in a downtown area that I can have a lane house, maybe I've got a mother-in-law, maybe I want to have a home office, maybe I want to rent it. All of a sudden that's income. And so then I can run numbers and see, well, what's the value that this brings in? And a city like Toronto, it brings in a lot of value. If it's Thunder Bay, maybe not, but in Toronto, it does.
fun fact is a house in Toronto the other week sold. They built a laneway house in the back, and it sold for 2.6 million, 500,000 over asking, just because it had the laneway house there. So a big opportunity in the laneway business, everything to do with laneways. This is only like, it's the market hasn't even been exposed yet. The market is still very fresh, and it's something that I probably, in my lifetime, there's all the houses are still not going to get built in all the laneway houses, even in my lifetime. It's just going to be a never ending kind of new business venture in the city of Toronto. Laneway houses. If you go through any laneway, there's maybe a nice long laneway has maybe like upwards of 50 to 100 garages. All of those will one day be houses, laneway suites, as they say. And yeah, exactly what Tom mentioned. For your, even for your kids, say your kids starting a family, and they can't afford to put a down payment in a house in Toronto, but you have the ability to build a laneway suite that's fully functional, that will be two-story, that will be able to support a family of a new family. It's very profitable then for you, just for your kids in the meantime, while and they're in a way they're separated from the parents. They don't have to go through all that stuff, and they're not living in the same house essentially, and they have their own privacy, their own space. So it's a very new concept, very cool, very future.
Great. I think there are a couple of quick more questions, because I don't want to keep you all day. I know you got a business to run. So one of the questions was, well, you can't really explain how you, like Tupac's got a question. Would you be able to explain how you quote jobs? Maybe at a high level, like how you go about quoting without getting too detailed is great, Nazar, because I think that would be another whole section.
I'll be quick, short and simple for that. I always quote my job based on the amount of days in my head that I think it's going to take. So if it's a smaller project, then it's easier to determine how many days it's going to take for you from start to finish. You can easily, you know how much you can produce yourself, or your crew can produce in one day. So you figure out by that job how many days it's going to take. And once you have the days, you factor in how much your labor is going to cost for those days. You figure out how much your materials are going to cost for those 3 days. You should be able to know what you're going to be using, what material you need for a small job of a couple days. And then once you have all those prices, you figure out how much you'd like to make on that job. And then that right there, you have a quote. And based off that, you can submit it, and that's it. So it's again planning in your head, thinking forward, thinking ahead, crunching all the numbers down, and then putting it into writing.
And another question was, what was the most challenging aspect about starting your business? Nicholas had that one.
Honestly, the most challenging aspect of starting the business was after I bought my car, after I bought the work car, after I got all my tools, after everything, I had about like maybe $1,500 to $2,000 left to my name, and it was like middle of the month, so I know there's a couple more weeks until rent is coming up. I lived on my own, and all those things, and that was the biggest stress factor those couple weeks, was where am I going to get a job? Where am I going to find someone who's going to want to work with me? And how am I gonna pay for my basic necessities? I'm not even talking about like anything for myself. It's just like house, food, rent, my trailer parking, all this stuff, insurance now. And that was kind of the toughest part, was that until that first couple projects came, it was the what's next aspect. What's next? And what's the next job? And I don't know what's going to be the next job. And sometimes sometimes right now I don't know what's going to be tomorrow, but by the end of the day today, I'll somehow get a phone call, and that will turn into a job for tomorrow. And it's crazy how that works. But it's also in your head. You got to believe in yourself. You got to be confident in yourself. You can't talk down to yourself when you're in a hard time, or when you're in a like that the beginning stages where it was rough, and thinking what's next, where am I gonna get a job, who am I gonna do work for. It's staying positive, staying on top, staying believing in yourself, and not letting anything from the external affect your internal, because that's the main thing kind of here. And but yeah, one first project came, and after first one, second, third, and now it's maybe over 100 already in the year and 3 months. So when you believe in the business, you keep putting in the work, the true work, the from morning till afternoon, doesn't have to be till evening, doesn't have to be physical work necessarily, just dedicating your time to the business, to building the business. Things will come. Positive thoughts bring positive things into your life, and that's the concepts that I live by.
Okay, that's great. I think I see there's a couple more, but I don't want to keep you any longer, Nazar. I really appreciate you taking the time today. This is stellar. So I think the students really will look up to what you've been doing and have a lot of inspiration and sort of vision for where they want to take themselves as a result of today. So I really appreciate you taking the time, Nazar. It was really excellent, and for me it's very gratifying to see how well you're doing with things. So I really am enjoying your progression as well.
Thank you, Tom. I honestly appreciate that. And guys, Tom was definitely my favorite professor for the 4 years of school. I enjoyed his class the most out of everyone. I was always in his class, so make sure you attend his classes. Listen to what Tom has to say. He's got a lot of valuable knowledge. He's got a lot of valuable experience, and don't be shy to come up to him or even message him personally, because now with the whole COVID, to ask for any help, any advice, any input, anything. Tom has always been there for me. I know Tom's always been there for all of the kids that I went to school with in my program, and there's nothing but good things to say about Tom. So attend his classes, ask him any questions that you need, pay attention to what Tom has to say. It's valuable knowledge. And I'll go off on this note. I have my Instagram in here, and my email and my phone number. If you guys ever want to reach out to discuss anything, or if any of you guys want to potentially reach out to me next spring or summer for maybe some work, getting some part-time or full-time hours in. It is hard physical work, but the pay will compensate that. And yeah, so if you guys are looking for a little challenge, getting a little muscle building exercises, and make some money out of it, give me a message, an email, a DM on Instagram, or text or call sometime next spring, early summer, and maybe we can get you a spot and can get you working, make some extra money.
Thanks, Nazar.
All right, Tom, it was a pleasure. Thank you,
have
guys.
Have a great day. I'll be in touch with you shortly.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Thanks.